Thank you, Dr. Krauser. We're going to follow the same format if we go to the agenda page there. Same format we followed in the past meetings. We're going to go over the design process and updates, both for the intermediate and for the high school. We're going to talk about probable cost factors and updates, as well as schedule updates. So as far as the last 4 weeks, for the Intermediate Center, we've had a program design meeting on the 19th of December. There was a special education and learning support meeting at the very turn of the year on the 5th. And then we had a design update meeting earlier today. That was a follow-up from some of that special education and learning support. Now, in that special education learning support meeting, we did go through each special education space in the intermediate school proposed plan, and we determined what that fell into as far as a program. Now, I've talked about the program a lot. That's all the pieces that go into the building. This was really kind of putting locations to each one of those, making sure we had the correct adjacencies, that a special education room was not going to be disruptive to the rest of the educational wing, that had the right proximity to the administrative suite or the nursing support that might be in the building. So it was really looking at it holistically. The task assigned from that point is actually putting names to spaces and making sure that everything's going to function the way that it's supposed to function. We also had high school meetings. We had a program design meeting at the turn of the year on the 9th. And then we did, on that same day, we had Walliver Architects join us. They specialize in aquatics design. And we did a survey and evaluation of the pool. And I'll get into that in a little bit here. For the next 4 weeks, we are having the High School Advisory Committee coming up tomorrow. So we'll be doing an update and getting input from the community on that. Design development meetings, documentation, 3D modeling. This is really where the rubber hits the road with our engineering coordination as well. So for both projects, we're starting to have those conversations. Specifically civil engineering as well, really starting that in earnest. And then we're going to continue to refine the site and the building option layouts. So I mentioned about the natatorium, the fact that we had Walliver Architects join us on the 9th for a meeting. Ted Walliver, he is the owner of the firm. We have been involved with that group on many projects, including Dover and almost all the other schools that we've worked on that have pools. They specialize in aquatics design. The reason we want a specialist in aquatics design is because, I mean, we want the pool to function correctly. We want that specialty, that expertise. I also wanted Ted to come out and take a look at the pool, the existing pool. Now, Mrs. Thompson, she had discovered when she was going through paperwork, she came across a study that was done on the pool, an investigation on the longevity of the pool, what needed to be invested in the pool, and this is the existing pool that we're talking about. What that study and investigation said, it was not brought to our attention during the study phase where we were evaluating all the buildings. It only came to our attention after the fact in the past, I guess, month and a half. And what that said is, with some investment, the pool could have a much longer life. And at that point, we said, okay, let's pump the brakes here. Instead of talking new natatorium this entire time, which is what we've been told, you know, everything leading up to that point, we had been told it was shot and it couldn't be reinvested in. That kind of got turned on its head. Dr. Krauser said, we got to chase this down. We got to really take a look at this earnestly and see what we could, what our options are at this point, essentially. So on the 9th, Ted Walliver came out. We walked the pool area with a couple of the maintenance staff. He evaluated the shell of the pool. And when I say the shell, for those who don't know, this is actually a pool that you can walk around completely underneath. It has a hollow space outside of each 4 walls of the pool. That's not typically the way you build it these days, but that does allow us to look on the outside of the pool and evaluate the structural condition. Now, back in around 2010, 2011, there was some investment into the pool in taking some of the exposed rebar and some of the pieces that needed attention and fixing those. Now, some of those things that were fixed are now needing refixed. And what I mean by that is that you can now see the rust stains inside the pool. If you look around the skimmer line, you look down at the bottom of the pool, things that were even fixed about 5 years ago when we did that ceiling project are now showing signs of age. That's never going to stop. If we invest money into the pool again, we get rid of all the rust, we repoint all the grout lines, we clean up the tile, it will continue to do that. Unless we figure out a different way of finishing the inside. If we go to the next slide, that's what this, I'm sorry, the previous one, I realized you had that one up already. That's where Ted came in and said, you know, we should really look at this other option. You know, if you can live with some of the original sins of the pool, and we'll get to the original sins in a minute, if you can live with some of the original sins of the pool, then reinvesting in the pool would be a much more cost-effective option. And the way that you reinvest in the pool is you get a company like a Murtha Pool. What that is a stainless steel and PVC liner that goes inside the existing pool, and it gives you a lot of options. What that does is it takes a stainless steel PVC liner, goes around all the walls. You end up with a cushioned PVC floor to the pool, and then they come back through and they basically finish the whole thing in one fell swoop. What that does is it gives you a new pool inside your existing pool. It also gives you the ability to make some changes to the pool that you can't do to the existing pool the way it stands right now. For example, even as recent as earlier today, Mrs. Thompson was explaining to us that she's going to have to dive to the bottom of the pool and try and figure out where the leaks are happening in the drain pipes through dye tests. What we're able to do with this Merthyr pool is we're actually able to reduce the depth of the pool, still keep it within the national standards for competition, but reduce the depth. We're able to put new drain pipes in at the bottom of the pool. We're able to get new pipes for the entire pool. We're able to come through and we're able to take the skimmers out, the skimmers that are rusting right now out, replace them with stainless steel skimmers, and improve air quality as well. Now, by reducing the depth of the pool, you're also creating more efficiencies inside the pool. So you've addressed some code issues that exist. Right now, we're not able to drain at the bottom of the pool, create circulation flow at the bottom of the pool and at the top of the pool. That's a code requirement. We'd be able to fix that through this new liner system. By bringing the floor up, you have a smaller volume of water, so smaller heating bill, smaller chemical bill, and you're able to control it more steadily. In addition to that, because the PVC liner, we no longer have concrete and masonry touching the water, which affects the chemical makeup of the water. So we're no longer bleeding those minerals out of that concrete. We're able to have a liner where the pool water is the pool water is the pool water. So on that list, what else did I not hit here? Warranties. So we've always talked about this as a 20-year project. You know, you come into it, we don't want to recommend anything that would not last 20 years. There are ways to do a less expensive version, but they do not come with a 20-year warranty. That 20-year warranty, I have a 10 plus 10 there. There's 20 years on the finish, that PVC finish, and the company will come back after 10 years, evaluate it. As long as there's no major scarring and everything's been treated properly, they'll re-up that warranty for another 10 years. So that's on the finish. There's 25 years on the additional components, like the stainless steel, the pipes, those kind of items. So 20-year on most parts, or 20-year on the liner, 25 on the rest of the parts. I talked about the reduced volume, and modifications bring your pool up to code compliance. We're going to improve the filtration and sanitization through this, and then improved air circulation in the pool itself. So that pool pack is up for replacement. At that point in time, we'd be able to do a more comprehensive mechanical renovation. So instead of just pulling the pool pack off and hooking it up to the ductwork, we'd actually be looking at supplying air down at the bench level, which will increase airflow across the water surface, which will get rid of chlorides that build up on the surface of the water. So those chlorides, we all know chlorine is a gas. It hangs on the surface of the water. And for anybody who's been in swimming, you know the surface of the water is significantly below the surface of the deck, meaning it just creates a basin. So the more we can increase the circulation on the surface of the water, the more those people participating in fresh, clean air. Next slide. This is an example off the Merthyr website, just kind of going through the steps. So when they do actually put a pool inside a pool, what they do is they create a structural system that attaches to the existing pool walls and floor, and that's what you're seeing there in the first image in the upper left hand for the clamps. Second step is taking those stainless steel panels and lining all the walls, attaching it to that structure that they put in there. The third step is incorporating the overflow gutters, so that new stainless steel gutter system that could be installed on the perimeter of the pool. Fourth step is protective reinforcement, so they actually come back and they have a sub layer that connects all the different seams together, so you don't have any divots or grooves. And then the finishing, the PVC on the walls and the floor and that membrane, that all gets applied after the fact. Now, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, okay, is a lined pool really the best way to go? This is the same kind of quality, same kind of installation that a lot of the Olympic pools, they are created through. So this is a high quality pool with a high quality warranty. The other advantage, you end up with a single source for the filtration system, the piping, the pool liner itself, the brand new pool inside the pool, as well as the skimmer and gutter system. So everything except for the HVAC pretty much goes under one contract, one source. Something goes wrong, it goes back to that one group. Major advantage to this, it comes at about a half to a third of the cost of building a new natatorium. Significant cost savings if we were talking about a price tag of $8 to $8.5 million for a new. Negatives, the original sins. We are stuck with the pool. If you want to renovate your pool, you are stuck with the pool in the heart of your building, which means we're going to have to continue to provide access to that part of the building for use of the pool. It's not going to be something that's kind of installed off the main entry of the building that you can just open that part of the pool or that part of the building. You will need to open up a more significant part of the building to have access to it. Second original sin, it's a 4-lane pool. Most competition pools we're putting in schools these days are 6 lanes. That's for ease of having competitions, ease of practice, scheduling, so we'd be agreeing. The last original sin, the observation. So where you're actually able to have spectators is raised. It's above the corridor, so there's no really good way to try and get an elevator in there. So ADA access to that upper level for observation is not really feasible in the current footprint, which means we'd have to provide access and assisted seats at the water level for that purpose. That is acceptable in most townships. I don't anticipate an issue with that here. So that's a lot to unload on the pool in a very short period of time, and I'm sure there's questions. So before we go into anything else with the high school updates, let's talk about this.
Clarify the amount. You said $8 million. Repeat that part.
When we were going through the study process, we had recently received bids back on Mechanicsburg High School, and they were doing a natatorium addition onto their building. Those bids came back at the $8 to $8.5 million. They came in at about 8, but that did not include locker rooms, so we were saying it might be 8.
Okay. That's if we built a. Did you attach a figure to this new plan?
Not yet. This is the first pass. This is the recommended solution. We'd be looking into it more and getting more numbers.
Understood. Thank you very much.
And we're seeing this. At our first pass, we were coming in at 50% or even a third of the total cost to the projection.
So you're saying it's what, $2 to $3 million to do this option is what you're ballparking. I'm not holding you to that. I'm just
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's what I wanted to know. Thanks.
The Mechanicsburg pool though is 8 lanes, correct? Okay.
Because we pulled up those drawings to kind of compare square footage.
And that's where we got that from.
It had an extra entry lane to it. It wasn't an actual
Okay.
swimming lane, so it was kind of the
That might be what I'm thinking of.
a little step down.
Do we currently have overflow gutters?
So we currently have a perimeter gutter system. By overflow gutters, what do you mean by that?
Like when I'm looking at this picture here where it says overflow gutter, I'm like, do we have anything like that?
We have gutters.
We have gutters. Essentially what they'd be proposing is actually making a more shallow gutter that's closer to the water surface that gives the ability for more of that ventilation to happen.
Yeah.
We do have a full perimeter gutter system, but the overflow gutter actually helps with splashing. So as the activities are going on, there's less kind of splash back into the water surface.
And it's hard to tell from this picture if it's something that you can walk on. Because that's my concern looking at that picture is that we don't have a ton of room already.
Yeah, and that picture is in
it's
process.
Hard to, yeah. I'm like,
That's not the finished product. That's them installing it
Okay.
while the pool deck still hasn't.
And in addition, correct me if I'm wrong, the other advantage of that is in the current structure, you're losing less water by doing this, so there's a less recycling piece to that end.
Yeah.
So we're saving water both on the low end and on the top end.
well, and the first thing that perked my ears was everything you were talking about with the water, because there have been multiple times just in this last swim season where we couldn't use the pool because of whatever was wrong with the water. So obviously a new pool, I knew that would hopefully happen. But this seems, it's a good option. I am hesitating though because of the security that we're not getting with this solution. We do have a lot of access currently when we go in for a swim meet. I think we're good about it. I don't think we're doing but yeah, that.
Well, and those are some of the design challenges as we go, because we will take a look at the high school tonight. I know we've focused on the intermediate school at this point. So we will look at some initial design concepts here. We can talk about how that might be addressed and how we can secure a larger part of the building than we can right now.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I appreciate that reference, and that has been a conversation we've had about one of the priority criteria. So that is a design solution that we've been working through. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Steve.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I am concerned about the ADA compliance, which is a huge factor, and you can't take it for granted that township will go, yay, yay, whatever we want to do, kind of thing. It is, as having crawled up those steps and up into the bleachers, it's a hike up there. So I think that has to be taken very seriously. We're going to have a whole building that's ADA compliant for 2024, whatever year we do this, and we don't have that. I think that's something I have to think about real long hard. Plus the fact we're still left with a 4-lane pool and not a 6-lane pool, which gives you pause to think, I think. But it is fun. If you ever get a chance, I will tell you, to go down and walk around the base of that pool. It's a real life experience. Do it. It's very, you have to sort of hold your breath at first, but get down and walk around that pool. I have done that, and it's
Maybe we could sell tickets and we could fund
there
it.
we go. Well, we could fund it, there you go. So anyway, interesting. Thank you.
How many of these have they done?
These are worldwide. This is a company out of Italy, and they do these all around the world, professional Olympic installs. This is not a new and untested product.
I would love to see a local customer list, and hopefully it's manageable enough for you to be able to call every single person in Pennsylvania, every single school in Pennsylvania that's had this done.
So the reason we pulled in Ted Walliver, one of the reasons we've pulled in Ted Walliver is he's done these hundreds of times. And just in the meeting that we had with the administrative team, he brought up probably a half a dozen examples that he's recently completed. So I have no doubt that he'd be able to provide a list, and if it meant a visit, I'm sure we could organize that as well.
And I'll just comment to that, and Mr. Wentz can add to that, referencing quite a bit of similar scenarios such as us. Western Pennsylvania he was naming quite a few schools in that Western Pennsylvania area, that kind of suburb, Pittsburgh area that's kind of going through these same challenges, that systems that have been in place for a long time, and they're using this as a solution. So I think we can absolutely get those lists for us, yeah.
Is excluding HVAC just the heat portion of the pool?
It's the pool pack. That's that unit on the roof.
Oh, okay.
Pack is a brand name. That's what you happen to have. Replacing that is going to solve the heating and air conditioning and ventilation for that.
Thank you.
The things are still in good enough condition.
We're going to have to evaluate all of that as we go through. I know Ted did mention about retiling. I didn't ask him if he meant retiling because it needs to be retiled or because he wanted a different aesthetic for it, or was suggesting a different aesthetic for it. So we need to go and evaluate all that.
Would seem to make some sense so that you don't have new and old, and then something's bound to happen. Do you know what I'm saying? You can see getting done, and all of a sudden you're back there.
Yeah, ideally, if we were coming in and making it a new pool, we don't want the entire space to fill.
Yeah.
Yeah, our goal this evening was to just get a consensus on the will of the board to continue to investigate this as a viable option. As you heard Ms. Wentz say, that we've been searching for this the whole time to think of other options that still satisfied the goal of creating a better swimming experience that met the needs of the original design, and to do that in a way that was potential cost saving. So I think I'm getting some nods around the table that we're continuing to pursue that and dive deeper into that, unless I'm hearing something to the contrary, Madam President.
Speak now if you're not interested. I think it's worth investigating.
Thank you.
I'm going to move the microphone
Yeah.
to the next one because we're going to start the floor plans. All right. So, much like the intermediate school, I want to start out with a concept and not necessarily an exact floor plan. I want to talk about circulation and the approach to the school here. So, first thing we always look at is how do people access the building? Same thing we talked about with the intermediate school. I know we talked about that Main Street concept. That Main Street concept, for those who may not have been here for that, it's really trying to figure out how you get to all those large volume spaces that you want to provide access to. How do you get the students in and out, and how do you secure that? A school doesn't just function for one activity, getting kids into the building and get kids out. It functions as a community center, a community hub. So how do you do that? Well, in a new construction, it's a lot easier. We had one main street that went down. All the gyms and cafeterias and everything were on one side. The classroom wings were on the other. Existing schools, you got to work with the existing conditions. Existing Y-shaped schools, it's even more challenging. So what we're suggesting here is actually a slightly different approach than what we had in the study, but a familiar approach from what we had in the study. Some of you were in the room here when the third option for the high school was shared that wasn't actually intended to be shared. It was an option that actually demolished one of the classroom wings entirely and created a new Main Street circulation on the, I guess, the south side of the campus there, close to the parking lot. We looked at that and we kind of dusted it off when we started this approach again. We were like, man, every single time we try and do this building and create good connection to your auditorium and your gymnasium to a place where you actually have parking, there's no way to do it unless we approach it slightly differently. So I'm sure all of us have experienced coming to an event here, and where do you enter? Most likely it's not right here. Where you enter is back here at the back of the building. At which point you are then funneled like cattle through this hallway in between the gymnasium and the auditorium while you're trying to make sure your kid gets the right spot and you're trying to find your family members that showed up there and you're all trying to end up at the auditorium or the gymnasium to see the event that you really want to see. Same thing happens when you leave. Everybody's funneled into this really tight corridor where they're trying to get pictures and everybody's trying to connect. It just does not work. So we did not want to say, okay, this is going to be our main entry, this is going to be our main entry, especially when you consider we're doing a new two-story addition over here that's adjacent to the parking. There's got to be some way to funnel people from that parking, where the epicenter of your parking is, through the building. What we're suggesting here is creating a new main street that goes directly from that new that existing main parking lot, where you're going to have most of your event parking, down through a new corridor created for the school, down to the arrival space there, where you have your auditorium, where you have your gymnasiums, where you have those large volumes that you want access to. At the same time, we didn't want to lose that connection over to the cafeteria, so if you did have an event going on here, that could all flow as one continuous space. Now, I say that's one continuous space, so it's also much easier to secure. This social studies wing right here is the existing classroom wing on that side of the building. That could be secured along with the science wing from this main street through control access doors. Same thing can be said for everything beyond this virtual learning pod, down in through the world language. There would be no access beyond that point because you have all your egress here at the administrative suite out the existing front of the building. Now, what we're also able to do is have these secondary access points that get you around the building. That secondary access point, that is the current back corridor of the building, and this one here, that's that current kind of cattle chute I was talking about between the gym and the auditorium space. Those we can control how much of that is open and how much of that is not. And what I mean by that is we have an auditorium that we're talking about saving right in the heart of that building, meaning that this hallway right here, the secondary hallway, could be open to that existing back as your egress, but your main entry and your main communication into the space is still through the new main entry, the new side lot entry coming off the side here. Now, we are proposing a revision in some of the circulation over here. You'll see the kind of patio that was enclosed, the covered walkway that was enclosed to create that hallway connection is taken off here, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But in doing this, we've created a much more secure school that has different levels of security depending on the activity, that's able to give you access to all the spaces you want to be, and we're able to expand parking in certain areas where we'd like to expand parking. Now, this school functions, the way it's laid out right here, as having two main entries. There's a main entry at this location, that's the current front of the school. We are proposing continuing to use that as the parent drop-off loop. That is the main entry, that's the address of the school, that's where everybody's used to being dropped off. And then we're talking about having the parking lot lined with a new bus loop. We did not want to have the parent drop-off mingling with the student parking and all the crossing of people there. At least the bus drivers are trained in watching out for students. Ideally, I would like to have those completely separate. I just don't see a way that we can make this site in particular work with having those 100% separate. Questions on the circulation? I'll talk about some of the organization then. So the way we wanted to organize this building, and it was really a collaboration between the administrative team, some of the input we got there, and some of the, we stay back on the last one, thank you. We want to have the regular education happening in learning pods, learning communities. So you'll see the classrooms here, the classroom pods, social studies, world language. On the second floor, it happens to be ELA on this side and math on the other side. We want to keep those all in one kind of learning community. We were able to do that in the existing classroom wings while providing some of the student common space, some of that kind of breakout collaboration space. We're able to do that through the repartitioning of the classrooms there. You'll remember a lot of those classrooms are under the 650 square feet required by PDE, so they're going to have to expand to meet those minimum size requirements. So those are the learning communities for those. We do have a two-story science wing here. There's a component of it on the first floor, a component of it on the second floor. That's part of that new construction bubble. We are proposing moving the administrative suite out from being internal in the classroom wing. We're trying to get virtual instruction there. Virtual learning there. That gives good adjacency to the exterior. And then underneath the existing media center, we're proposing having a new, larger, expanded administrative suite happening there, infilling that space that's currently the pull-through. As far as tech ed and the STEM area, if we go to the back of the building, the current cafeteria and the arts, that would all be consolidated together to create one kind of STEM learning community right there. So we'd be able to have all the tech ed components adjacent to the art and that kind of overlap that could happen between those. As far as your athletics, again, we're able to group that entire piece together, the existing gymnasium, the auxiliary gym, the natatorium, and then we're proposing expanding the fitness and the weight functions in that area, along with team locker rooms and other items that need direct access out to the fields, as well as access to the gym and the auxiliary gym on the inside. Nestled adjacent to the cafeteria and some of the student commons, we're putting culinary arts, family consumer science. Culinary arts could have a component that actually serves and creates a business model inside the school. So there's potential of having some sort of sales or entrepreneurial piece to that. If we go to the second floor. I mentioned about the learning communities. Again, these are the existing classroom wings. Those would be repurposed into ELA adjacent to your media center in the new construction piece. Math on the other side in the existing wing. And then the one thing we are suggesting here, in order to get that administrative suite to fit, and we've been talking about the way that this would be organized, guidance could actually be stacked in the media center on top of the administrative suite and still have vertical connections through the building to make those easily accessible to somebody from the outside. Business component inside the existing media. And then inside the new construction over here, we have the second floor science wing, the media center, and we are considering the option of doing a second floor infill on top of the cafeteria, on top of the kitchen there. That would be a potential district office location. I'll get into the district office here. We're exploring that as options. The 6,000 square feet that we have here in this district office is about half the size of what we actually need. So I was tasked with taking a look at this and repurposing and potentially, but the original ask was, can we put the district office on top of the existing building and do a second floor? And I said, yes, but it's super expensive. Why don't we consider it as part of the new construction in an area that we don't currently have two-story construction, which would be much more efficient. This block right here is 6,000 square feet. This building is 6,000 square feet. That would get us where we need to be. Next page. So we don't just do everything in bubbles. That was to try and get a concept across. This is the actual layout with every single space. Every single space has the appropriate square footage as determined in the building program. This is the way it would actually lay out. So we talked about the administrative suite, the face of the school as it is right now, being kind of expanded underneath that media center. That's that block that you're seeing right there. We would create that main entry off the administrative suite, kind of underneath, tucked off off to one of the sides. Now, this new Main Street corridor that we're creating here, if some people haven't put it together where that is, that's actually the courtyard outside the classrooms right now. So we'd be taking a roof, pretty much putting it across where the courtyard is, and connecting to those athletic facilities there, which are the locker rooms currently. And we'd be enclosing that, creating a kind of story-and-a-half space, not really trying to overdo it because we want as much natural light in there as possible, and using that space that's currently just a liability for trees and turning it into better circulation for the future building. So that location also works. As I mentioned earlier, you have this main parking out here that gets you through the building to the administrative suite. Each one has a major terminus. The major terminus of this side is that cafeteria student commons component. So if you did decide to have the building open after hours, if you were having activity, a function, that cafeteria could be as open or as enclosed as is determined through the design process. But the idea is that it would have use as usable space for those events, those gatherings, everything else after hours. Now again, we have secure access points. This one right here, you see is a set of doors. You can't get back into the rest of that wing, even though you have a large part of the building open. So you can get through the entire building here. We can secure it back at this point, just beyond the auditorium. And then each one of these educational wings, you see the doors happening right there. This entire science and social studies wing, that's inaccessible in that event that you have this open for events. Same thing happens over here. That world language wing can be secured separately. Stairs obviously create security to the second floor if we didn't want to allow access to the second floor functions. I'm not going to go through every single space here. I think we kind of did that already, but I will touch just very quickly on this piece up here. We are sitting right here in this room. What we're proposing here, and I've been asked to look at this building about, what, half a dozen different times. Each time with a different function. You know, does it want to be athletics? Does it want to be, you know, remote learning? Does it want to be... This is the first time I've been asked to take a look at this building and the function actually fit. What I mean by that is we have an existing structural load-bearing wall slicing right through the center of this building here. That's that wall right there. And that always has created trouble for whatever function we try and put in there. What we're able to do is have a new boardroom inside this footprint. This room could remain as is, as a conference room. And then we're able to take IT, and well, I believe earlier today, this says transportation up there, but earlier today we determined that would be better for food service. And have those functions, the IT, food service, and a professional development and boardroom located in this existing building. So some of those activities like this tonight, where you're bringing in a large group of people from outside the community that don't necessarily need access to the rest of the building, you can have them there. What that does is it creates a new entry point on the building right here. That would be a district office entry. So have a stair, elevator, a reception component, maybe a conference room that would get you up if you were a guest, a visitor coming to the campus, that would get you up to the administrative suite that's on the second floor. So if you were coming for a specific meeting, you could have a conference room down there. Maybe you just go into the conference room. You never make it through this. You never need to come up to the stair in the second floor. Just some concepts on how that could work. Questions? That's a lot.
Oh, yeah. Science classrooms, right down there left. Okay. Is that going to have 2 floors or 1 floor? 2 floors.
Stories of science rooms stacked on top of each other for efficiency.
Going to get rid of that awful room 160. Oh, sorry for you those who graduated from here, but no.
How many? Oh, sorry. How many elevators are going to be in the building?
So we're still working through that. We know there's a huge problem with the elevator location right now. There's only one elevator. It's located right here. It is not our intention to keep that elevator. It's old. If we're doing this project, we should just replace it. And it's also not the right size. We should be able to have a gurney go in there for an emergency situation and pull somebody out. You can't do that. So we would propose having an elevator somewhere in the new construction piece. While we redo this entry piece on this side with the administrative suite, we'd be talking about putting an elevator at that location. And then if the district office did exist up in this corner, we would need an elevator to get you from that district office entry up to the second floor.
We've talked a lot about the pool, but we haven't talked about, and I don't know as much about the gym, but also the auditorium. Are we doing anything in either of those spaces?
So I'm going to get to a square footage analysis that talks to a little bit of cost and everything in a little bit here. We are not doing anything major to the gym or the auxiliary gym. They don't require major upgrades.
Okay.
The auditorium, though, if everybody was following along last year, we did have a bid go out and we received quotes on upgrading the lighting, the sound system, and the stage rigging and equipment. Mm-hmm. That came in much higher than what the vendor said it should have been, and we tabled it. It's going to become a part of this project. Okay. So we're going to get better costing and be a part of the larger project.
And are we talking about a functional black box theater where it says choral/black box?
So what we're talking about is making a room that can function as a black box theater inside your choral classroom.
So lighting and all.
So we're going to have to determine to what extent we'd take that.
Okay.
Maybe we create the volume. Yeah, we got to make all this affordable too. So if we create the volume, if we create the tunable room itself, proper acoustics on the walls, proper curtains around the space, proper storage, and the square footage. If there has to be a grant written at some point in time to get the lighting and other things, the important thing is that we capture that box now during construction.
Yeah. And it's a larger room than Chorus has right now.
Oh, the room that Chorus has right now is
it's like this room. Yeah, it's too small. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
When you mentioned about the gurney, it sort of piqued my interest. Where will the nurse's office be in this setup?
So the nurse would be part of that administrative suite, that infill underneath the media center. So you want the you want the staff there with the nurse's office. Somebody comes to pick up their kid, they're easy.
Right. Thank you.
And Mr. Sullivan, you'll appreciate this. The band room stays where it is, but this corridor connector coming across there, what we really wanted to do was continue a performing arts suite, a performing arts area to the building. One of the biggest challenges the school has is getting all the marching band equipment out of that room into the trailers. It takes over this entire area right here with, kids playing Frogger as they're trying to get everything they need. One of the reasons we're talking about taking this piece off and changing the circulation to a new corridor that connects across here is that we'd be able to use that courtyard that has that giant tree in it as parking and access for trailers for loading, unloading, without being in a main circulation spine, vehicular circulation spine. Other questions on the plan? Okay, then let's move forward to the next slide. This is just the second floor. Again, learning community, backed on top. We have media center component here, and then this is that district office piece. I think we already kind of hit on all that, so we can keep moving. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about cost escalation. John Badia, for those who don't know who John Badia is, he is one of the managing partners of Crabtree. He's been involved in the study part of this process and continues to consult throughout the project and development of it. I asked John to take a look at the budget updates. So I say updates. It should be budget update. We're going to talk numbers about the intermediate school. But to put it in a little bit of context, the first thing we always do is an escalation analysis. So we are constantly tracking our projects that go out to bid, and we're constantly updating those projects as far as their costing. This one is Peckway Valley. We have a number of them, but I chose Peckway Valley. This is a project I was actually in charge of for the Peckway Valley School District. It's a new middle school and high school combined on their campus out there. So we had originally started this project back in 2020, and I want to preface this by saying these numbers that say actual, they're coming out of the RS Means book. That's a historical costing index. So the actual cost of construction in the Harrisburg area back in 2020 was $230 a square foot, more or less. Now that escalation as the pandemic we were coming out of the pandemic, things were looking pretty stable. 230, that's not that much of a difference from the 229. But once we hit January 22, things went crazy. And we all know the world went crazy at that point. You couldn't get supplies, you couldn't get pretty much anything, and the cost reflected that. So our cost per square foot jumped up significantly back in 22. Now this is where we start tracking percent. That number right there is the actual cost per square foot we had on that building when the bids were received. So that's at our 0% for inflation, because that's our benchmark. That's the number we know for a fact. We also know that the actual inflation percentage was 3% back in 2023. That's through the RS Means. And then as we take it to January 2024, this is our estimated, what we're tracking so far. That's the 2.29. The reason I bring this up, I had been asked the question in meetings previously, have you included enough for inflation in your estimate? Now what we included was 3% per year. And what we're seeing here as the numbers are tracking, we're within that range, and if this holds true through the end of the year, then we're actually doing better than what we had estimated. So I'm not saying our building is going to cost $286 a square foot. This was a high school and middle school combined. We're talking about an intermediate school. If we're talking about East York, it will be significantly less than that per square foot, probably by about $20. But I'm using this as context just to say the estimate and what we had planned for seems to be good as far as inflation. Now, this is a slide we should be familiar with. Right here up at the high school, I'll touch on that one first. This line right here are all the numbers as they stood during the study process. So when the board said, yeah, let's engage in this process, those are the targets we had created. So the high school, I do not have budget updates at this point. There are just too many things up in the air that we're still trying to pin down to actually assign numbers to it, and it would be too premature. But what I do want to compare are the demo, the square footage of new construction, and the total square footage of the building. Numbers in blue are numbers that are tracking on the mark or under the mark. Numbers in red are ones that are over the mark. So as far as the demolition, we had in the study 31,000 square feet of demolished building. We are actually reusing more of the building than we had originally anticipated. I believe the proposal back during the study took the media center off the front of the building and created new construction in that whole footprint. Because we're able to infill underneath of it and we don't have to rip the media center off, that took our demolition costs down. So we are at 26,500 as compared to the 31. As far as square footage of new construction, everything that you saw today is comparing to where we were at the study. We were at 82,357 square feet in the study. We're at 82,200 square feet now in the proposal that we just showed you. If we look at the total building square footage, it is at 255,900. But as you had pointed out earlier, we're not doing anything to the gymnasium or the auxiliary gym. So if we don't need to include the gymnasium and auxiliary gym, that's 13,300 square feet, which means our actual renovated and new construction square footage is 242,600 square feet as compared to the study at the 246,000. So right now, the high school, as you just saw, it seems to be tracking the way we would want it to be tracking, and it's actually in our favor. Questions on that one? Okay.
We like that.
I was very happy as I ran those numbers.
And does it include the pool?
So it is the way it's showing today. So it's with a renovated pool inside the building in its existing place. Intermediate school.
So how much of that 13.3 is the last study, was the pool outside of the building, or was it in?
I knew you were going to ask that question. I do not have that. I do not have that answer because I was running these numbers yesterday. I have not had a chance, but I did actually task one of my teammates to go in and investigate exactly where that square footage fell in that chart in the study. So I'm not trying to pull a trick here. I'm just saying I have not gotten to the end of that answer yet.
Thanks.
All right, intermediate school. So in the study, again, this line right here that I'm highlighting, all those blue numbers are where we were at the study. That's the target we created. So we were at 120,000 square feet in the study, and that's all new construction. We're at 41.1 to 43.6 million as far as a budget. Now, since our last meeting, in our November, that says November, that was December update, I apologize. We are at 127,350 square feet. Again, we continue to revise the building layout. We continue to find efficiencies. So we are down to 125,000 square feet as it stands right now in the design. Again, that was not through a program reduction. That was through efficiencies and circulation that we were able to realize. And we eliminated a corridor that was behind the administrative suite between the cafeteria. That being said, that is within 4% of the total overall study square footage, which is really good at this point in the design process. The reason I say that's really good, we still have not gotten the layout for the cafeteria. I believe we have 4,000 square feet reserved for that. Same thing with the mechanical room. We're always more conservative when we're sizing those before we get the mechanical engineers involved. So I anticipate that 5,000 square foot difference to be more narrow as we continue this process. The other thing, I did go back to the study on this one, and I took a look at the program, and I compared it to the program that we have right now. The two areas that did increase as far as square footage were student services. So the student counseling aspect is larger than what we had anticipated after we went through the programming process, as well as learning support. That was it has more rooms than we had originally planned for in the study. Now, that's only about 2,000 square feet of that difference. But my point in bringing that up, those are parts that we couldn't have predicted back then being as robust as they are, but they are pieces of the building that have a profound impact on the students. So, again, we're going to continue to look for efficiencies. I feel like the program is solid and it should not be reduced on the program at this point. We'll look for efficiencies through circulation, other parts that don't take away from the student experience.
So why is, you have a range there of 43.5 to 44.7. You have a 6% bump in the low end of 3% on the high end. Why is that?
We are taking those, I actually have the stuff in my bag here. We are taking projects that are similar in size and program, and we're taking the actual square footage number, and then we're taking that escalation factor that we had just reviewed before. And we're taking a project that came in lower in budget and a project that came in higher in budget, applying the escalation factor, and that's creating that range. So we're using real numbers from real construction projects in this region as the baseline for the low and the high. So again, if we're going to
use the same mix for both, I don't understand why the low end's kicking up 6% and the high end's kicking up only 3%.
Again, so our most expensive project that we had that's of similar comparison, and the least expensive that we have a similar comparison cost per square foot, we're taking that as the low end of our range and the high end of our range. And we're applying that escalation factor. If it was bid a year ago, we'd be taking that 2.3% whatever it was and applying it to that.
That's the most conservative way?
It's the most accurate way based on real bids that have come in. If I do anything else, we're just taking a look at a means book that was published, that was written a year ago, and then published and distributed, and it's outdated before.
You're going to have to walk me through that then. Maybe come back and show me here, but because that doesn't seem.
I'll stick around after. I have the sheets, and I do want to also say, so this was pulled together by John Padilla. I had mentioned that he'd been doing cost information. Yeah. I wanted somebody that was not me, personally attached to the district. I wanted him to come into it, take a look at it from his eyes, being involved in a breadth of projects that are beyond what I'm involved with on an everyday basis, and get an impartial view of where the budget, where he feels the budget is. Okay.
So it sounds like what you're doing is instead of looking at how all projects vary from underruns to overruns and coming up with a single range and applying it to our project, you're looking at low end and high end as two different sets of projects.
So we have projects that could meet the same criteria, be bid, and they could even be the same square footage and come in with different bid results. And it's very hard to explain why that happens, because it can even be the same group of bidders. You know, same type of construction, same size of project. So again, some of the things in the bidding market we can't explain all the time. But by doing it this way, we're at least using real numbers of a similar project on the low end and the high end. And that's the way we were doing it.
Seth, are these building-only costs per square foot?
That's building and site, and then it also includes the soft costs, so it would be furnitures, finishes, technology.
And that's why there's a difference with the cost per footage with the comparison.
Yes, if you just took, the overall project number in the study, divided it by the square footage of the building, and then applied it to square footage overage, you would come up with a much higher number than what you're actually seeing for projects.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's keep going. I don't think there's much more here. Schedule. So K&W is our civil engineer on the intermediate school project. I did have a discussion with them earlier today about the approval process in Spring-Asbury Township. They did get me a preliminary schedule. The schedule on the top here is where it was the last time we met and discussed. So we were aiming for the intermediate school. And just before anybody jumps down to the high school has not been updated. We're still tracking, no changes to that. The only changes to the intermediate school. We had during the last update, we were projecting for an August completion of the new building. This 18 months right here, that's new construction. We had that starting in October of 24, and then we'd be coming back doing the site work May, July. Land development, after talking to K&W, they feel like It's a little ambitious to try and get to that point and be bidding in July and August. They feel much more comfortable with an approval process that puts bidding in September, October. What that does for us, that pushes us 2 months back in the schedule, but it doesn't push us 2 months back in construction. What I mean by that is our construction time here, our 18 months, still holds true. We're going to wrap up new construction in June of 26. The students are out of the building June of 26, which means we can actually overlap demolition and new construction at the same time at that point, meaning that we save a month of overlap right there. New building would still be set up, all the furniture moved in, all the technology connected over that summer. Students would be able to move in August and start using that, and the site work would just be finishing up in September, that very beginning of that next school year. Slight modification, but not major change.
What's the impact for the site work during that 2 months or a month and a half?
By the time you get into the very end of it, it's going to end up being paving, so it's not like you're having the big front loaders pushing dirt around and stuff like that. You're not going to have the building coming down while students are actually inside the space. So it would be mostly paving and striping and vegetation.
Exterior. Thank you.
Yeah, it would be all exterior for the overlap.
Appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Just looking at, like, it's starting dead of winter, how is that going to affect if we have a harsh winter?
I was really hopeful that every winter is going to be like last winter.
How'd that work out for you?
It's a risk. I'm not going to say it's not a risk. I can't control the weather, though, and I wouldn't want to delay an overall project based on a fear of weather. So, yeah, it's a risk we're going to have to be realistic about, and I'm going to have to put in the specifications, the amount of weather days that we're anticipating, and perhaps front load that to give them, they have to anticipate it. If I put a weather day in there, that means they expect to lose X amount of days to weather, and they can't complain about it until the end of the project.
I trust that you'll figure in the end, students don't go before the teachers. The teachers need plenty of time to move themselves in. I've done that I don't know how many times here, and it is a monstrous undertaking. Just breaking down all the cartons that they've put all their books and wares in is enough to make you a crazy person. So got to allow a lot of time.
And that's one of the reasons we always try and target this June, July for the completion of a new construction project. That way they can start moving their stuff in July. The rooms can get set up. The technology can be installed.
That ought to be written down someplace so that they understand when they're going in. I mean, otherwise they start jumping around by May 15th to, ask special privileges and can we get in and whatever, kind of thing. I don't blame them, but they want to do their nesting and get their rooms ready. Can I ask you a question about the middle? As a result of the big fancy basketball tournament that we had in town last weekend, I want you to know how many parents really think it'd be really neat if York Suburban had a gym like the Field House out at Votech. And I had to say, I don't think so. I didn't ask your permission. I didn't ask, but I felt fairly certain we were not having that. Is there potential for us to have a full-size high school gym at the intermediate school?
That's the plan as it stands right now, yes.
Okay, because that makes a huge difference in practice space and all kinds of. One of the best things we ever did at Valley View was put in that full size. So that is in the plans at least to get a full size gym.
Yes, and the stage we're actually planning on having a solid folding partition as a protective front to that stage. So if you did have a competition activity happening there, balls don't go flying into your performance.
Good. Thank you.
It's not a cafegimatorium, but it's kind of sort of one.
It's sort of kind of one, yeah, but at least it's a full-size gym. That's
understood. I'm with you, Ellen. I'm with you. Yep.
I think that was the end of it. Let's confirm there. And that's the end of it. All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Wentz.